Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice solved some of his legal issues over the week. We'll tell you what that means for his dynasty value next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can check out all of his great work over on SI. And Fab's training camps are starting across the league on Monday. And we got a lot of news that we need to sift through. And let's start with Rashee Rice, who has had this legal battle hanging over his head now for over a year. We thought that nothing was going to happen this year because the trial date was set for January. He was going to be in the clear for the entire 2025 season. Instead, he settles out of court. He's going to have to serve 30 days in jail at some point over the next 5 years. What does this mean for his value in 2025 and beyond?
So in Dynasty, I think it's much ado about nothing. I don't know how many games it's going to be. There's been rumors out there that he's likely to receive a multi-game suspension. It could be a 6-game suspension, potentially because of the sort of incident itself in where he was going 40 miles over the speed limit. And there were 5 damaged vehicles. There were 2 people that were hospitalized. It could end up being a little bit more than 6. Maybe 6 to 8, somewhere in that range. So in redraft, obviously, I mean, I've dropped them down. Now the Chiefs wide receiver to draft first is Xavier Worthy. This could also potentially make Rice a bit of a bargain if he falls too far, because you and I both agree that he has wide receiver 1 potential from a fantasy perspective. So in redrafts, yeah, his value certainly sinks a bit. But in Dynasty, I still want Rashee Rice on my team. He's young. He's going to end up being the number 1 option for Patrick Mahomes in the very near future. I'm not saying that it'll be this season because of the suspension, but next season, assuming all is right in the world of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce retires, Rashee Rice's ceiling is sky high. So it was a stupid off-field move. Hopefully he's learned from this. As you said, he's going to have to spend 30 days in jails at some point over the next 5 years. So hopefully that sinks in. We don't get any more nonsense from Rashee Rice. But in Dynasty, I don't really see his value falling very much. And to be honest with you, I already had Xavier Worthy ranked pretty highly. I'm not going to move him up either.
Yeah, so Rashee Rice, wide receiver 15 in our latest batch of ADP from July. I don't think it's going to move. And in fact, I would not be surprised if it goes up. Now, obviously, a lot of this depends on the suspension. I know there was a couple reports out on Thursday and Friday that the Chiefs are bracing for like a 2 to 4 game suspension.
Doesn't that seem light, though? Because
yes.
That just seems very light to me, because when you look at the NFL's personal conduct policy that is already in place, like the baseline for this kind of thing is 6 games. So if he gets 3 or 4, again,
I agree.
Bad on the NFL, first off, bad on the NFL, but then you got to rethink where you've moved him in terms of your redraft rankings.
Yeah. So let's go with the assumption that it's 6 games, because I think that's kind of the common belief, right? That he's going to miss 6 games. That means he would be eligible to come back on October 27th against the Commanders. Yes, that's a lot of games, but it might not be the worst thing, right? You're still getting him for all of November, all of December. You're getting him for your fantasy football playoffs.
When you need him.
Yep. You're also getting him without a suspension, hopefully, going into the 2026 season, right? That would be his contract year. And you're hoping that he plays well enough to earn that contract so he can stay in Kansas City and be that featured guy. But there's also part of this, Fabs, where It's not the worst thing in the world for him to serve an early season suspension, considering that he is coming back from a major knee injury. Like it buys him another month and a half to get up to speed, to condition himself a little bit better. Again, maybe I'm coping because I have Rashee Rice in a lot of leagues, but I think it's better to get it out of the way now rather than hanging over us during the entire season and wondering what it's going to look like maybe in 2026 and beyond.
Agreed. Let's pull the Band-Aid off quickly and have it done with. And so once again, over on SI, my rankings in terms of Dynasty, I didn't move him. Redraft, different story. It's a different beast. But you get it out of the way, and moving forward, as you said, hopefully there won't be any other immature incidents from Rashee Rice. And I do think that there is a world where he will be a top 12 fantasy wide receiver for the next several seasons.
Yep. And we should mention he is on a 5-year probation as well, which again, that's going to take up most of his NFL career. But I do want to point out one thing. Let's say it's a 6-game suspension. That is the easiest time in your fantasy football seasons to replace a guy like Rashee Rice, right? Because most of the bye weeks haven't started yet. They usually start, weeks 5 through 10. So you're going to have your full roster at your disposal. In theory, your roster should be as healthy as possible in the first month of the year. Again, this is not the worst case scenario for Rashee Rice. And that's why I would not move him. Wide receiver 15, I would not move him at all in dynasty leagues.
Agreed. I think we're on the same page here. Just seeing the potential for him to be such a valuable asset in the future. Let's get this over with and let's get him back and hopefully keep him for a long, long time.
Now, really quickly, before we move on, some of the receivers ahead of him, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 14, Marvin Harrison, wide receiver 13, AJ Brown, wide receiver 12. Would you take Rice over any of those players?
All of them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I love Rashee Rice.
Garrett Wilson's close. Garrett Wilson's close. But I don't know who the quarterback for the Jets is going to be after the next 2 years. I like Rashee Rice. I don't like what he did off the field, obviously. Stupid. But I love the potential for him to be Patrick Mahomes' #1 target for the next 3, 4, 5, even more years.
So let's keep going. Wide receiver 11, Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Yeah, I have a thing for JSN. I kind of dig him, but it is a very, very close call. Very close call. In fact, I'd have to go back and look at my dynasty rankings, but I think I might have Rashee Rice either just ahead of or just behind JSN.
Okay. Last one, Lad McConkey. Would you rather have Lad?
No, I'd rather have Rice.
Okay, so we're talking about Rashee Rice as a top 10, top 11 dynasty receiver right now. So even at ADP, we think he's a value. Go out and trade for him in your leagues right now. All right, let's talk about Jordan Addison, who also had some legal issues solved over the last week. We'll tell you what that means for his dynasty value next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it just a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are out getting sunburned at the beach. I love the FanDuel app. It's easy to use. There's fast to pay out, and it even makes regular season games feel like must-watch events. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Workplace stress is at an all-time high. 61% of the global workforce is reporting higher than normal stress levels. And this summer is the perfect time to take small steps to focus on your wellness and manage the challenges that come with your workday. Of course, most of us just can't go out and quit our jobs or take endless vacations, but we can start small, whether it's getting outside for a couple more minutes or adding some more movement to your day, or talking to someone who can help you navigate life's challenges. That's where BetterHelp comes in. Listen, BetterHelp can help you set healthier boundaries at work so stress doesn't spill over to the rest of your non-work life. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We need to talk about another high-profile receiver who is dealing with some legal issues. So Jordan Addison, Minnesota Vikings, he had a DUI case from his rookie season, I believe, that would need to get solved. He had a court date on Tuesday. He got pushed back to Thursday, and he eventually settled outside of court. It sounds like a 3-game suspension is what's going to happen here. That's kind of been the precedent that the NFL has set. Does that do anything for you in dynasty leagues?
No, I'm not moving him. 3 games. We just talked about Rashee Rice not being moved and potentially being a bargain at a relative level. I'm not going to move Jordan Addison, young wide receiver who's had 2 very good seasons in the NFL. JJ McCarthy coming in. We're going to find out exactly what McCarthy's got there in the right arm. And we know that he's in a very, very friendly offense when it comes to not only the passing game, but fantasy football production. So he might drop a couple of spots in redrafts because you're not going to have him for 3 games. But for all of the reasons you had mentioned with Rashee Rice, it's best to have a guy out for the beginning of the season. You're healthy. You're going to have a healthy roster. Most guys are not going to be injured at that point. So you should be able to replace him somewhat easily in the first 3 weeks. I'm not moving Addison. I assume the 3 games, he misses the Bears, Atlanta, and then Cincinnati. So Ray Felton will see some more snaps there in the first few games of the season. Certainly not a risk to take Addison's job. So I'm not really moving him in Dynasty at all. And in redraft, maybe a couple of spots, but I'm probably not going to move him too much, if at all.
No, and it feels like even in our leagues, dynasty leagues, redraft leagues, the suspension has already been baked in. Like we kind of already know that it's going to happen.
Yes.
So don't double count it here, right? I think that's the main thing. We should also mention that Jordan Addison dealt with a high ankle injury that he got in training camp last year. He tried to play through it early in the year, and he just wasn't that effective. But as the year went on, he got healthier and healthier.
Yes.
He is somebody that I'm kind of targeting. Wide receiver 30 right now on Dynasty League football. He's 23 years old. He scored 19 touchdowns in the first 2 years of his career. And that's with how many different quarterbacks? That's with Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs. And he's been incredibly productive. So you're getting a guy at wide receiver 30 that can give you this touchdown upside, who's averaging about 70, 80 yards per game and about 90 when he's healthy. I kind of love Jordan Addison. I think now is the time to buy.
And the fact that you mentioned Joshua Dobbs and Nick Mullins, it should ease the minds of fantasy managers out there because it was easy to draft a guy who was catching passes from Kirk Cousins, and then Sam Darnold. Like I can't stress enough, Sam Darnold was a bust, folks. I mean, he was a high draft pick of the New York Jets. He was a bust. He was a journeyman, and I guess he still is, right? Because now he's on another team. But this guy played at a Pro Bowl level and was a top 10 quarterback in fantasy. He had never come close to that previously in his career. So if you're worried about JJ McCarthy, well, folks, for McCarthy to falter in this offense, the Vikings scouts, their coaches, their front office personnel would have erred on a massive scale because this offense is so quarterback friendly. I have no concerns, obviously, about Justin Jefferson and certainly Jordan Addison either because of system. The system is what we're looking for here. And the Vikings had enough faith in J.J. McCarthy to draft him 10th overall last year, considering he was going to be the future quarterback of this franchise. So don't be concerned about that. If McCarthy falters, Marcus, it would be one of the great errors of not only NFL scouting and coaching, but fantasy as well, because I don't see a scenario where this kid is awful and he completely destroys the value of all of the receivers around him just because the system is just so fruitful and beneficial from a fantasy standpoint and a statistical perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance that McCarthy is not a great real life NFL quarterback, and maybe the
Yes,
Vikings regress
sure,
3,
sure.
4 wins. I just have a hard time seeing them not putting up points. Like, everybody in this offense has put up points. They've got one of the best offensive lines in the league. They've got one of the best skill position groups. They're going to score points. And I think let's say he's bad. Let's say JJ McCarthy really struggles. Minnesota will go out and get a quarterback next year. I mean, Aaron Rodgers wanted to play for them. There's going to be plenty of quarterbacks that want to go out and play for Kevin O'Connell. So I don't worry about that as much. But one of the things I just can't understand is in January, Jordan Addison's ADP was 34th overall. Since then, it's now down to 57th overall. And again, we're banking in a 3-game suspension. I don't care about a 3-game suspension all that much. It just doesn't matter all that much over the course of a dynasty career, right? And again, you can replace him easier. Why has his ADP dropped basically 2 full rounds over the last 6-7 months?
I think just people overreact. And I don't know what that drop has been in the last, say, month or two, but I people overreact, and we're going to actually talk about that a little bit later on with Quinshon Judkins. But it's that initial overreaction of he's going to be suspended 3 games, and there's questions about the quarterback position, and this guy's never thrown a ball in a meaningful NFL game, and what happens if JJ McCarthy is a dud? People have those kind of concerns. I don't. I'm not concerned about it. I look at system. I look at Nick Mullins. When he played, he had some pretty decent numbers. I look at Sam Darnold, who, again, for all intents and purposes, was a dud in the NFL. His career was dead. He was a backup for the 49ers the year before. And he was supposed to be the backup last season until McCarthy hurt his knee. So let's keep that in mind. That, I think, is the reason. It's the fear of the unknown in this scenario here. And I don't have that fear, with Jordan Addison or this Vikings offense.
All right, we're going to talk about a couple players that were released over the week, including Noah Fant and Mike Williams. But I wanted to get your quick thoughts on Quinshon Judkins. Matt Williamson and I talked about it on Wednesday's show. He continues to deal with his legal issues. The Browns have said they are not going to sign him to a contract until he gets some of the stuff figured out. We've basically seen all these second-round picks get signed, including the players drafted before him and after him. Those guys all got guaranteed deals. What are your thoughts on Quinshon Judkins now? We've got rookie drafts. I'm sure they're going to be coming up over the next month. How are you handling this situation?
I dropped him a couple of spots, but I feel like, again, I was in New York over the weekend for Scott Fish. And if you look at the scoring system for that, it's very running back friendly. I mean, Judkins was on the board in the 8th round, and I took him because I listen, I don't mind throwing a dart. I also got Travis Hunter in the 3rd round, by the way. That ought to be a lot of fun. But the bottom line here is that for me, absolutely awful, terrible decision, and he should be punished for it. And my guess is that a suspension will be coming, but it will be his first offense. So I'm guessing it's not going to be a overly lengthy suspension. The Browns want him to get his off-field stuff right. And I think that makes all the sense in the world. But I think this also kind of mirrors, you remember Mike Hall Jr. From last year, the defensive tackle
from Ohio State, who got drafted by the Browns in the 2nd round. It feels very familiar.
The Browns are going to give him a second chance, much like they gave Hall a second chance. They drafted him 4th overall in the 2nd round, 36th overall, ahead of Trevion Henderson. I do wonder if they have buyer's remorse, though, because they could have had Henderson, and I would have much rather seen Henderson go to Cleveland, but whatever. It is what it is. Maybe you move Dylan Sampson up a smidge. I think in a worst case scenario where, Judkins gets suspended, and I kind of feel like that's probably the worst case scenario. Jerome Ford will see a little bit more work earlier. Sampson will see a little bit more work earlier. They also have Pierre Strong. I think they have an undrafted rookie on the roster too, Amani Marshall. He's not going to make an impact, but I wouldn't. If you feel like, well, I'd rather have RJ Harvey now, or I'd rather have Caleb Johnson now in Dynasty, I get it. I totally get it, because it's an ugly incident, and you don't know if this is the first of multiple sort of off-field incidents, because if you're dumb enough to do it once, I mean, you may be dumb enough to do it again. Hopefully he's not. Hopefully he's going to learn a lesson here. But I didn't really drop Judkins significantly in Dynasty. I did drop him a little bit more in redraft. I will say that. There are now some players, again, like I mentioned, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, that maybe I'd rather have over Judkins, David Montgomery. And this is, again, redraft. But for those people out there who like to avoid any sort of controversy and they don't like to take chances, then avoid them. I don't think the Browns are going to cut ties with this kid. When I was in New York at the draft, and I drafted him, some people were like, are you worried the Browns are just not going to sign him? And he's not. No, I'm not. They will give him a second chance. Yeah. Whether they give him a third chance if one, is needed, I don't know about that. They'll give him a second chance. And my guess is if this kid's got a brain in his head, he will be on his best behavior and he will come in and at some point, end up taking over the starting job for the Cleveland Browns.
Couple real quick trades that have happened over the last 3 days involving Quinshon Judkins, just to kind of show you where his dynasty value is at. Judkins for Alvin Kamara straight up.
So in Dynasty, I don't know that I love that. I don't know that.
I love Judkins.
Yeah, because Alvin Kamara is a great running back. But he's getting to the point in his career where he's maybe got one, maybe two more like productive seasons before the wheels fall off. So I don't know that I would have done that.
Quinshon Judkins for Brandon Ayuk straight up. I don't have Judkins.
No. Yeah. I don't. Brandon Ayuk is going to end up on the PUP list to start the season. He's not going to play this season. Yeah. He's been somewhat of I don't want to say problem child, but he's also expressed his displeasure at times.
You're getting two guys that probably won't play the first 4 or 5 weeks.
Right. And I'd rather have the younger running back. Brandon Ayuk is really hard for me to prognosticate, Marcus, because he's coming off the ACL. And then, Ricky Pearsall, also, the Niners have shelved him for the start of training camp. That Niners offense and the pass attack, they've got a ton of questions. This is a team that was in the Super Bowl not too long ago, and they have a ton of questions, both in terms of real and fantasy. Think about this. Christian McCaffrey has played 7 or fewer games in 3 of the last 5 years, and they are going to have to lean on him to be a durable player. Brandon Ayuk is probably not going to start the season on time. Ricky Pearsall's dealing with an injury. Joanne Jennings has said, I want to be traded. The Niners could be a bad team if a worst-case scenario occurs where McCaffrey goes down, where Ayuk's not the same player in year 1 after an ACL, if Jennings is complaining, if Pearsall can't avoid injuries. This could honestly be, in some respects, a fantasy offense you want to avoid because there's so many question marks about players' health and other scenarios.
All right, I want to talk about a couple of players that were released in the last week, including Mike Williams and Noah Fant. What does that mean for their respective values? Well, Mike Williams retired, so he doesn't have any. But what does that mean for like Elijah Arroyo and the Chargers receivers? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Reshape. Guys, you probably have heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Reshape Ready. Reshape Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that take hours, Reshape's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast on average in 15 minutes. And effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Reshape might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head over to Reshape.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That is RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatments. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety effectiveness or manufacturing review. Please visit the Reshape website for full safety information. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Want to let you know that the Locked On NFL Top 100 is here, voted on by the NFL host of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every single day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't miss where our Cowboys, go check out Locked On Cowboys, where those guys ranked. Dak Prescott inside the top 100, along with Brandon Aubrey. Go check it out. It's a really, really good show. All right, Fabs, let's talk about Noah Fant, who was released by the Seahawks on Sunday afternoon. What does that mean for Noah Fant? What does that mean for Elijah Arroyo?
First off, I was thinking, I wonder if Miami would have rather had him than Darren Waller if they had known that Fant was going to be on the market. But I thought off the top of my head, I'm like, what team could sign Noah Fant where he would make a fantasy impact? A positive one. I couldn't find one.
It's tough.
I mean, maybe Carolina, but they have Jatavian Sanders and they have Tommy Tremble there as well. They also drafted a 4th-round tight end. I don't see a team where, unless there's an injury, that Fant can come in and really do much. I mean, let's look at his numbers.
Could Arthur Smith fit another tight end in his
right?
offense?
I mean, that's the joke, right? I mean, that's the joke. Yeah. I mean, geez Louise. He probably wants to. But Fant never recorded more than 50 catches or 500 yards over the last 3 years. So I don't know that I've taken out of my redraft rankings in terms of the tight end position. And I mean, it's not like he's, old, but he just never really reached the expectations that we kind of thought that he would have coming out of Iowa when he drafted by the Denver Broncos. And now that he's gone, Arroyo is the guy that everyone in fantasy is going to get excited about, right? He was a 2nd-round pick, 50th overall. Had a lot of injuries in college. I'm not going to lie. He was certainly a player who had some issues. He tore his ACL. He also had issues with his rehab into 2023. But then when he was healthy, which was last year, he had 590 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he was graded in the top 20 by PFF among the tight end positions in FBS who had at least 30 targets. He's very good in terms of his yards per catch. And we saw that last season at Miami. He was 6th in terms of NFL passer rating when targeted. So, I mean, all of this is good, but they're not going to hand him the job. I mean, AJ Barner is still there. He was a 4th-round pick in 2024.
Better blocker. I do think so. He's going to get on the field a lot. Barner will.
Right. So, I mean, does it on the surface, does it make Arroyo more attractive in Dynasty? I mean, of course it does. I mean, that Fant was like the big hurdle. But like you just said, I mean, Barner's a good blocker, so he's going to be on the field. And I don't think the Seattle Seahawks are going to be a team that's just going to be throwing it all over the place. They're not going to be airing it out. They're going to run the ball. So blocking is going to be very, very important. So before you get too nuts and move Arroyo way up your rankings at tight end, I tap the brakes a little bit, as our good friend Elliot Harrison often says, and understand that, while it's a positive for him, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to vault into a starting role in Seattle and he's going to be this year's Sam Laporta.
I'm bumping him up a little bit, but I'm not going crazy. He's not like Brock Bowers and Sam Laporta, 2 guys that led their respective schools in receiving yards as tight ends. He has always been a complementary piece, and he was somebody that really did nothing the first 3 years of his career at Miami. I think I got to make sure I get the stat right, but I think Arroyo caught his first pass beyond a 3rd and 1 in week 6 of his senior year. That's all how he was used.
He was barely used as a freshman. Then he got hurt, and he played, I think, 4 games the following year. And then that his rehab extended into 2023. So he wasn't really healthy until last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the numbers are not eye-popping either. Mark, It's not like he had, Harold Fannin Jr. type of numbers in college. They were good. 590 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's good. But again, like you said, I mean, this is not a player who's on that same sort of level in terms of the tight end position and the young guys coming out. My guess is that you still probably rather have, Terrence Ferguson, maybe even Harold Fannin Jr. Long-term over Arroyo. So while this is a good development for him in Dynasty, don't get crazy. He's still a guy that we have questions about.
As for Noah Fant, I agree. I don't think there's any one situation where he slots in and he's a starting tight end and he's fantasy relevant. But what I would like to see happen here, Fabs, is for him to go to a good situation and be a backup. And then if he gets the chance to play, then he becomes somebody that we slot into our fantasy lineups. Like, for example, if he goes to San Francisco and he's the backup to George Kittle, but George Kittle's missed some time, right? I think that's a really good fit. And now he's in an offense that makes sense for him. He in a role where he can get some targets when he's starting. But as a standalone guy right now, I just don't see it anymore.
The thing I worry about from a fantasy standpoint is that, like, in a situation like you had just mentioned, well, he goes to San Francisco, he's got no shot at putting a dent into George Kittle's targets. That's just not going to happen.
No.
But say for example he goes to like Jacksonville, and then all of a sudden you're like, damn, I really like Brenton Strange.
I know, that's what I don't want to happen either.
And then now you're like, darn, okay, so like now I don't know if I like him as much. So I think that's the problem from a fantasy standpoint, is that he's got a very slim chance of making an impact no matter where he goes.
Correct.
On a positive. But from a negative perspective, there is a much bigger chance that he goes into a roster and messes up a player that we kind of liked before he signed with that team.
Yep.
And that's what I'm a little bit concerned about as it pertains to Noah Fant.
Really quickly before we go, Mike Williams retired last week. Are you moving Trey Harris up your ranks at all, or was Williams
I already had
a factor?
I like Trey Harris a lot. I'm a fan, so it didn't really move the needle for me. Even in redraft, Mike Williams wasn't going to make an impact. But it's one other player that you eliminate from the target share pie, and
Bingo.
so that's a good thing. And by the way, I hear that I hear that Quinshon Judkins is dropping passes already. So, like, can we just agree not to draft TCU wide receivers ever in the NFL? I mean, like, come on, guys.
Although I just took Quinshon Judkins in the Scott Fish Bowl, so he was crossing my fingers.
I mean, but where?
Your 3 breakout. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Make sure you check out tomorrow's show when we're previewing the NFC East, going into training camp, some guys that you want to buy, sell, and some sleepers to watch. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. Check out all of his great work over on SI. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.